Have you ever met someone with a job title like Chief Happiness Officer or Innovation Guru and wondered, what do they actually do? Yeah, me too. Job titles might look impressive on LinkedIn, but in reality, they're often confusing, unhelpful, and outdated. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why job titles don't work, what to do instead, and how your team can start experimenting with more dynamic, roles-based ways of working. Let's start with the basics. What's the difference between a job title and a job role? Job titles are labels. These are the things that you put on LinkedIn or on a business card. They're usually fixed and tied to some kind of position of authority and denote where you sit within the organizational hierarchy. Think director, manager, assistant to the regional manager. A job role, on the other hand, is what you actually do. It's the cluster of tasks, responsibilities, and the outcomes you are accountable for. Roles are often flexible and dynamic and can shift as the work changes. Here's some metaphors that I like to use to distinguish between job title and job role. A job title is like a box with a label on it. It sits on a particular shelf, but nobody knows what's inside of it. A role is like a hat. You can wear different hats, share hats with others, and swap them when the work changes. So why do job titles cause so many problems? First of all, let's be honest, they feed our ego. We get so attached to our job titles. They make us feel important and a little bit entitled. And what this often happens is it generates a superiority complex within individuals, which means they're more competitive and less likely to participate in teamwork. Second, they lack clarity. If someone tells you they're the CEO, what does that actually mean? Do we understand what they're doing in the day-to-day? We know their power and responsibility, but we don't know what they do. And third, titles are addictive. And in most traditional organizations, people chase the next title as if it's the only measure of success, rather than focusing on meaningful work. So what's the benefit of ditching job titles and switching to roles? Let's dive into it. Personalization is a huge benefit of roles-based working because people can craft their skills, strengths, and talents to the work that they actually want to do. Wouldn't that be so much more liberating that if we did work that we enjoyed and we were good at? This is a possibility, yet we still keep taking only one piece of people's talent and shoving them in a box. In role-based working, people can try new roles. And this helps them when they're going through that evolution, that personal change, where they want to try something different. As individuals, we grow, we change, our motivations adapt as we get older, and yet the workplace seems to want to keep us in one lane and doing one thing. But actually, if we have role-based working, we can try something different and be able to test out some new skills and apply ourselves differently without having to navigate outside of the organization. As a company culture coach, one of the biggest benefits of roles-based working is clarity, because everybody knows what everyone else is doing and what they're responsible for. I've seen it so often in teams where there's frustrations about lack of accountability. I think it's got to be one of the biggest tensions that exist within teams and organizations, that people aren't taking ownership. And I often say, ownership over what exactly? Because if you're not clear on roles and responsibilities, how can you keep anybody accountable? Because people can't own something that they don't know that they have. So getting really clear on roles and responsibilities alleviates this tension and stops things from getting messy. Flexibility is another benefit of roles-based working because not all roles need to last forever. Let's imagine that you create an event once a year as part of your organization. And so you might need an events team to bring that together. And so you might create interim roles where everyone's got particular tasks and responsibilities in order to bring that event to life. Now, those roles are created and then dispersed as and when is needed. And the same goes for roles in organizations. We have this tendency to think that everything is fixed and forever, But actually, we can be really intentional and purposeful about roles. We can make sure that we're always doing something that is actually adding value. The beauty of working in a roles-based way is that we're never doing unnecessary work. The final benefit that I'll touch on is balanced workload. Instead of hiding behind titles and never knowing what anyone's doing or what they're responsible for, we have the transparency and clarity of understanding exactly what people do and exactly what their capacity is. Now, in most traditional organizations, when we talk about capacity, people get a little bit nervous. And this is because if we're at low capacity, we get worried that our job is going to be cut and that they're going to say, oh, well, we don't need you if you're at low capacity. And if we're at high capacity and we're really stressed out, we can get told that we're not managing our workload well enough. So we have these narratives that limit us from actually talking about capacity. Instead, with role-based working, we have to talk about capacity because we might be wearing lots of different hats and we need to know what hours and energy it takes to play those roles. When we talk about capacity transparently, this enables all of us as a team not only to jump in and support some of those roles, but if there is space and that role is still needed, hey, guess what? We can focus on some creativity and innovation. And isn't that what all of these companies keep talking about that they want in the first place? Progressive organizations use role-based working because it creates greater agility, motivation, and less politics. So if you want to try roles-based working in your team or your company, here's a few practices to try. Map your roles. Write down everything that every individual does beyond their title. What are the tasks, responsibilities that people are currently juggling? And get it all out on a board so that you can visualize it. You might start to notice overlap or similarities, and this is where together you can start to find clarity and who is ultimately responsible for some of those tasks. Define each role. Ensure that for every role that you create, you have a defined purpose. Why does this role exist? What are the responsibilities that sit within this role? And what is the metric for success? How do we know that this particular role is currently being successful in how it's being stewarded? Create a space and a rhythm to check in on roles regularly. This enables us to make sure we can understand if the capacity has changed for that role and also if we still need that role. And this is the moment where we can shift and change things according to the needs of the organization and the needs of the team. Try a role swap experiment. Just for a day or a week, give people the opportunity to go and test out a different role from the one that they already have. This builds awareness of other roles that they might have an interest in, but also helps with that interconnectedness of how everyone in the ecosystem of the organization operates and what they do and why. And if you really want to take this seriously and start to shift towards role-based working, there are some amazing tools out there that help you to map the organization as nested circles and roles. You can look at things like Maptio, Peerdom, and Glassfrog. Now here's the tricky part. Shifting from titles to roles isn't just a process change, it's a mindset shift. Because we've been conditioned to believe our value is tied to our title. From school onwards, we're told to climb the career ladder, chase the next promotion, and measure our sense of self-worth by a title on a business card. So when we're talking about roles, people can feel a bit lost because who am I without my job title? The shift here is understanding that you are not your job title. Your worth comes from your skills, your talents, your contributions, not the label attached to you. It also requires organizations to rethink success. Instead of rewarding people for chasing the next box on the organizational chart, success comes from growing your skills, taking on new challenges, stewarding roles that make the most of your strengths. The mindset shift around roles takes time, and some people will resist it at first. And that's because titles are just something that we've become used to. They feel safe and familiar. But from my experience as a culture coach who supported teams in adopting this roles-based way of working, they feel so liberated and motivated and soon start to see that the old way of working feels pretty outdated. We are so conditioned to connect our self-worth with a title and strive relentlessly for the next best title. But it's not the title that matters, it's what you do that makes the difference. So here's my question for you. If you were to map out your roles, how many hats would you be wearing? If you found this useful, like and subscribe as I share bi-weekly videos of tips and practices on building thriving company cultures. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.